I drove 8 hours through a snowstorm to surprise my family for Christmas, only to find they forgot to invite me. 2 days later, my mother demanded $1,000 for my brother's wedding. They thought I was their personal bank, so I sent a $10 check and set a trap they never saw coming. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The tiny, blinking reindeer on my dashboard was the only cheerful thing I'd seen in 6 hours. Its festive red nose was a stark contrast to the aggressive, churning gray of the sky. Outside my car, the world had dissolved into a relentless curtain of sleet and snow. My knuckles were white, my shoulders ached, and my eyes burned from staring into the hypnotic void of the blizzard. I was 36 years old, a pediatric physical therapist, and I spent my life quite literally helping children get back on their feet. It was demanding, draining work, but the victories— a child taking their first step after surgery, a teenager regaining mobility— were my fuel. This week, however, my fuel tank was empty. My last clinic day before the holiday had been a marathon of back-to-back patients, last-minute insurance paperwork, and a tearful consultation with the parents of a new patient. I was exhausted down to my bones. But it was Christmas Eve, and I was going home. The 8-hour drive from my apartment in the city to my mother's house in my sleepy, rural hometown was a ritual. This year, I had told them I couldn't make it. "The clinic is just too swamped, Mom," I'd lied, a rare and uncomfortable act for me. The disappointment in my mother Diane's voice was palpable, but it was all part of my plan. For the first time in years, I wanted to surprise them. My Subaru's backseat and trunk were a testament to my love, packed so tightly I could barely see out the rear window. There was a top-of-the-line espresso machine for my mother, who had been complaining about her old drip coffee maker. For my brother, Caleb, there was a brand-new audio interface for his music career, a piece of equipment I knew he wanted but couldn't afford. And for his new fiancée, Evelyn, whom I'd only met twice, a ridiculously expensive cashmere wrap I'd stressed over for weeks. My own finances were carefully managed, but for Christmas, I always let myself be extravagant. Seeing their faces was supposed to be the payoff. I'd been imagining the scene for weeks. I'd pull in, exhausted but triumphant, honking the horn. The porch light would flick on. The door would fly open, and my mother's shriek of surprise would echo, followed by Caleb's, "No way, Alice." We'd hug, they'd help me carry the mountain of gifts inside, and I'd be enveloped in the familiar smell of Mom's pine-scented candles and roasting turkey. This fantasy was the only thing keeping my foot on the gas as the clock on my dashboard ticked past 10:00 p.m. The sleet had turned to thick, heavy snow, and the final stretch of unplowed country roads was treacherous. But I finally made it. I turned onto my mother's street, my heart giving a little leap of anticipation. Only the street was dark. My childhood home, the one I'd grown up in, was completely, unnervingly black. I pulled into the driveway, the crunch of my tires on the fresh snow the only sound. No porch light flicked on. No door flew open. The house was a dark, silent silhouette against the white landscape. My stomach twisted. Had they gone to midnight mass? No, my mother hadn't gone in years. I killed the engine, and the sudden, profound silence was deafening, just the howl of the wind. I sat there for a full minute, a cold, creeping dread washing over me, a dread far colder than the blizzard outside. "Mom," I called out as I stepped onto the unshoveled porch, fumbling for the spare key I knew was hidden under the loose brick. The metal was icy against my fingers. The lock turned with a heavy, unused clunk. I pushed the door open. "Hello, Mom, Caleb." The air that hit me was frigid. The house was empty, and the thermostat was set to 50 degrees. There was no smell of pine or turkey. There was only the stale, dusty scent of a house that had been empty for days. My breath plumed in front of me. I walked through the dark living room, my boots leaving wet tracks on the hardwood floor. No stockings were hung. No tree stood in its usual spot by the window. The house wasn't just empty, it was completely, utterly devoid of Christmas. I pulled out my phone. My fingers were numb, clumsy. I called my mother, Diane, straight to voicemail. I called my brother, Caleb, voicemail. My hands were starting to shake. I sent a text to our family group chat. Just got to Mom's house. Where is everyone? Did you go away? I'm here. Surprise. I waited, standing in the cold, dark foyer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Minute passed, 5. The digital silence was an answer in itself. My phone buzzed, but it wasn't a reply. It was a notification from a social media app. A distant cousin, someone I rarely spoke to, had just posted a new photo. I clicked it. The image was bright, warm, and full of life. A massive, beautifully decorated Christmas tree, a roaring fireplace in a rustic log cabin, and gathered in the center, arms around each other, smiling with mugs of hot chocolate, was my entire family. My mother, Diane, my brother, Caleb, his fiancée, Evelyn, even my aunt and uncle. The caption, posted just an hour ago, read, "The best family Christmas ever at our rented cabin. So glad we could all be together. Minus Alice, who had to work slightly frowning face, we miss you." I stared at the screen, at their smiling, happy faces. They weren't just away. They were together. They were having Christmas. They were having the Christmas I was supposed to be a part of, the Christmas I had driven 8 hours through a blizzard for, the Christmas my gifts were meant for. They hadn't just gone on a trip. They had planned a trip, booked a cabin, coordinated with aunts and uncles, packed and left, all without one single word to me. I wasn't just not told. I was actively, pointedly excluded. I sank down onto the cold, hard steps of the staircase, the car full of gifts outside, the empty house around me, and the digital proof of their betrayal glowing in my hand. The lie I'd told about work had become their convenient excuse. I looked at the photo again, zooming in on my mother's smiling face. The feeling that washed over me was so potent, so visceral, it eclipsed the exhaustion and the cold. It was a betrayal so deep and so baffling it stole my breath. I drove 8 hours to surprise my family. The only surprise was that I didn't have one anymore. The drive back was a blur of numbness and static. The blizzard had subsided, leaving behind a pristine, cruelly beautiful landscape of white. The radio played cheerful Christmas carols, each one a tiny, tinny insult. I turned it off, preferring the lonely hum of the tires on the snow-packed highway. I didn't cry. I was too far beyond tears, suspended in a state of cold, hollow shock. I arrived back at my apartment just as the first gray light of Christmas morning was breaking the horizon. My car, still laden with gifts I would never deliver, looked like a mockery. I slept for 14 hours, a heavy, dreamless sleep that was more like a coma. When I woke, it was dark outside again. Christmas Day was over. It had passed without me. I checked my phone, 2 new messages. The first was from my mother, Diane, sent late on Christmas Day. "Oh, honey, I see your text. I feel so awful. My phone was in the cabin all day. We just assumed you were working." The cabin was a last-minute idea from Evelyn, and it all came together so fast. "We missed you terribly. Call me when you get this." It was a masterclass in gaslighting. Last minute, you don't book a cabin, coordinate with multiple family members, and pack for a holiday weekend last minute. "We assumed you were working." A single phone call, a single text, "Are you sure you can't come? We're booking a cabin," would have revealed my surprise. But they hadn't sent one. They had taken my lie and run with it, grateful for the excuse. The second text was from my brother, Caleb. "Hey, Mom said you were upset. Sorry you missed it, it was awesome. Evelyn's family is loaded, they paid for the cabin. We're all opening presents now. Send your gift for Evelyn when you can, she's excited to see what you got her." Not "how are you?" Not "I'm so sorry we messed up." Just a casual, entitled demand for a present. My thumb hovered over the screen, a hot, bitter acid rising in my throat. I didn't reply to either of them. I couldn't. What was there to say? You forgot I existed. I spent the next day, the 26th, in a fog. I unpacked the gifts from my car, the bright, festive wrapping paper feeling like a cruel joke. I placed the espresso machine on my own counter. I shoved the audio interface into the back of my closet. The cashmere wrap for Evelyn I left in its bag by the door, like a bomb I didn't know how to defuse. I tried to rationalize, I tried to find an explanation that didn't gut me. Maybe they were right, maybe it was last minute, maybe I was overreacting. But the knot in my stomach told me the truth. This wasn't a mistake. This was a message. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who paid her bills and built a career. I was Alice, the physical therapist. They were the fun ones, the spontaneous ones. And in their new, shiny family dynamic, curated by Evelyn, the responsible one was apparently just the boring one. The one you left behind. But as I sat there, sipping tea in the quiet of my apartment, another thought began to surface, pushing through the fog of hurt. A cold, hard kernel of clarity. They had forgotten me. They had forgotten my prise. Say, my traditions, my seat at the table. But there was one thing they never forgot. They never forgot when a bill was due. They never forgot when they needed something. They never forgot that responsible Alice was also financially stable Alice. And in their carelessness, in their excited rush to create this perfect new family Christmas without me, they had forgotten one very, very crucial thing. They had forgotten just how much of their lives I was quietly, invisibly holding together. This thought repeated itself, a mantra of cold comfort. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I felt a subtle shift inside me. The numbness was receding, replaced by something else, something sharp and focused. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was resolve. The phone rang in my hand, startling me. It was my mother. I stared at her name, my heart giving a painful lurch. After everything, after the texts, the silence, the utter humiliation, I still loved her. A part of me, the part that had driven 8 hours through the snow, desperately wanted to pick up, to cry, and to have her make it all better. But the new, sharper part of me knew better. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. It went to voicemail. A moment later, a new text popped up. It was from Diane. "Alice, I'm trying to call you. Please pick up. We need to talk about Caleb and Evelyn's wedding." My blood ran cold. Not "we need to apologize." Not "we need to fix this." We need to talk about the wedding. The hook was in, the bait was set, and I, the fool, had been swimming toward it my whole life. Only now, for the first time, I could see the line. I didn't call her back. I let her stew for a day. It was a petty power play, but it was the only one I had. The silence, I was learning, was a weapon. They were used to me being instantly available, the family's 24/7 emotional and financial support hotline. My silence was disorienting to them. On the morning of the 27th, I finally called her. I kept my voice flat, professional, as if I were speaking to the parent of a patient. "Hi, Mom, you called." "Alice, thank goodness. I've been so worried. Why haven't you been answering?" Diane's voice was a rush of manufactured concern. "I've been busy," I said, the lie tasting like ash. "Unpacking, getting back to work." "Oh, well, that's good." There was a beat of awkward silence. This was the moment. This was where she was supposed to say, "Alice, I am so sorry. What we did was unforgivable. How can I make it right?" Instead, she cleared her throat and said, "Listen, honey, I'm glad I caught you. I was talking with Caleb and Evelyn, and we're all just so excited about the wedding. They've finally locked in the venue. It's that beautiful old estate, the Willows, the one Evelyn had her heart set on." I said nothing. The Willows, I knew the place. It was notoriously, astronomically expensive. "The thing is, honey," she continued, her voice shifting into that familiar, wheedling tone I knew so well. It was the favor voice. "They're just a little short on the deposit. And well, we all know how well you're doing. You've always been so smart with your money." This was the narrative of my life. I wasn't smart. I was frugal. I was frugal so I could build a future, a safety net. But in my family, my safety net was seen as their communal resource. "Mom," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You're calling me, 2 days after you forgot, to invite me to Christmas, to ask me for money." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Alice," she snapped, the faux concern vanishing instantly. "This isn't for me. This is for your brother. It's his wedding. And frankly, after you missed Christmas, I'd think you'd want to do something to show your support." There it was, the pivot, the blame shift. My exclusion was now my fault, a debt I had to repay. "And besides," she added, "it's not like it's a small gift. We were thinking you could cover the floral deposit, or maybe the bar package. Evelyn has a list. She said a $1,000 gift from you would really help them meet their goal." A $1,000 gift. Not a gift from the heart, but a line item on a budget. "Evelyn said," I repeated, tasting the name. Evelyn, the events coordinator who, as far as I could tell, had never coordinated an event outside of her own cash grab of a wedding. The lifestyle blogger whose social media was a curated feed of things other people had paid for. I'd met her only twice. The first time, she'd sized up my apartment, my car, and my career with the calculating gaze of an appraiser. The second time, at their engagement party, she'd made a joke about how lucky Caleb was to have a sister, with a real job to help them out. She was the puppet master. My brother, Caleb, was the willing puppet. He was 30 years old, my golden child baby brother, still working part-time as a barista to fund his aspiring musician dream. A dream I had funded for years. I paid for his first guitar. I paid for his recording software. I paid for the rent on his studio apartment for 6 months when he just needed to focus on his art. And my mother, Diane, she was the enabler-in-chief. Retired early at 62 on a meager pension, she lived in the house I grew up in, a house I helped her keep. I co-signed the refinancing loan. I paid for the new roof last year. I was the silent, invisible partner in her entire life. "Alice, are you there? Evelyn said the deposit is due on the 1st, so you'll need to send the check soon. Just make it out to Caleb." "A $1,000, I said. "Yes, that seems fair, don't you think, to show you love them." The call ended. I don't remember what I said. I think I just murmured an okay and hung up. I sat on my sofa, the phone in my lap, and the past decade of my life replayed in my mind. Me driving Caleb to college, slipping him a $100 bill. Me sitting at Mom's kitchen table, going over her delinquent bills, transferring money from my savings. Me skipping vacations so I could afford to fix her car. Me working overtime shifts to cover the emergencies that were a monthly occurrence. I had done it all without complaint because that's what family did. I was the responsible one, the fixer. It was my role, and I had played it so well they didn't even see me as a person anymore. I wasn't Alice, their sister, their daughter. I was the Bank of Alice, and they had just made their most audacious withdrawal request yet. The hurt from Christmas was still there, a deep, septic wound. But now it was joined by a white-hot, clarifying rage. A rage so pure it was almost peaceful. They wanted a $1,000 gift. They needed it. It was a goal. A plan began to form. It was sharp, it was precise, and it was, I had to admit, a little bit brilliant. They wanted a financial transaction. Fine, I would give them one. I walked to my desk. I pulled out my checkbook. I wrote the date. I wrote Caleb and Evelyn on the pay to the order of line. And in the box I wrote, $10 and 100. I paused, pen in hand. It wasn't enough. It needed a message. I tore off the check and grabbed a small, floral note card. On it, I wrote 6 simple words. "Consider it my blessing." I folded the check inside the card, slipped it into an envelope, and addressed it. This was step 1. This was the symbolic gesture. This was the insult to match their injury. But it wasn't the trap. The real trap was still to come, and it would be far, far more devastating. Mailing that $10 check was a declaration of war. It felt like dropping a match into a can of gasoline. I knew it wouldn't be the end, it would be the catalyst. As I dropped the envelope into the blue USPS mailbox, I felt a tremor of fear, but it was quickly overshadowed by a profound, giddy sense of liberation. The Bank of Alice was officially closed for business. Now, I just had to lock the vaults. This was my turning point. The passive, wounded victim who cried in her car on Christmas Eve was gone. In her place was a strategist. My profession required meticulous planning, precise execution, and an understanding of complex systems. I was about to apply that same skill set to my family. I went home and opened my laptop. It was time for my investigation. It was time to audit the Bank of Alice. I pulled up my online banking portal, my budget spreadsheet, and my credit card statements. For the next 2 hours, I meticulously traced every financial tentacle my family had wrapped around me. The sheer scale of it, laid out in stark black and white, was staggering. First, the big one, my mother, Diane's car. She needed a new one 3 years ago. Her credit was shot. I co-signed the loan, and to make it simple, the $380 monthly payment just came directly out of my checking account. I'd told myself it was a loan, but she hadn't made a single repayment in 36 months. Total contribution from me, $13,680. Second, the family phone plan. When Caleb was in college, I'd added him to my plan to save him money. Then, when Mom's flip phone died, I'd added her too. Now here we were, a decade later. I was paying for 3 top-tier unlimited data plans, including the financing for Diane's and Caleb's brand new iPhones. Monthly cost to me, $215. Third, the insurance. My brother, the aspiring musician, also aspired to be a reckless driver. After his last DUI, his rates were astronomical. He couldn't get insured, so I'd added him to my policy as an occasional driver of my car, just so he could legally drive Mom's. I paid his $150 a month high-risk premium. Fourth, the subscriptions, Mom's streaming services, Caleb's music mixing software subscription, their shared cloud storage, which was mostly full of his unedited band photos. Another $60 a month. Total monthly drain, $805. Total annual drain, $9,660. I stared at the number. Nearly $10,000 a year. That was a down payment on a house. That was a trip around the world. That was my life being siphoned away, one small favor at a time. And for what? To be forgotten at Christmas and then hit up for another grand. The rage was back, cold and sharp. My plan solidified. The $10 check was the symbolic gesture. This was the practical one. I logged into the auto loan portal. My name was on it. I changed the payment method from my checking account to nothing. I removed my bank details entirely. The next payment was due January 1st. When it was missed, the bank wouldn't call me. They would call the primary loan holder, Diane. I logged into my cell phone provider. With a few clicks, I initiated a transfer of liability for Caleb's and Diane's lines. They would receive a simple text message inviting them to accept ownership of their numbers. If they didn't, the lines would be suspended. I logged into my insurance portal. I navigated to Manage Drivers. Caleb, 30, high risk. I clicked Remove Driver. My premium instantly dropped. I went through my credit card, canceling every recurring subscription that wasn't mine. Finally, I opened my banking app. I had a high-yield savings account, the I'd been diligently feeding for years. It was my someday fund. I transferred 90% of it to a brand new, unlinked account at a completely different bank. The Bank of Alice was now officially in receivership. I closed the laptop. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I felt lighter than I had in years. The trap was set. All the little invisible threads I'd been holding, keeping their lives afloat, were now cut. All of them, all at once. I knew the $10 check would arrive first. It was due to be delivered tomorrow, December 29th. That would be the first explosion. It would be emotional, manipulative, and ugly. They would scream, they would guilt trip, they would insult. But they wouldn't panic. Not really. Because they would still believe, deep down, that the bank was open. They would think they could smooth-talk the banker, good old Alice, into reopening the vault. They had no idea. The real financial apocalypse wasn't scheduled to hit them for another 48 hours, right on January 1st, when the car payment failed, when the phone lines went dead, when the insurance vanished. I leaned back, a grim smile touching my lips. I had just bought myself a front-row seat to the show. All I had to do was wait. The call came at 10:17 a.m. on December 29th. I knew the mail typically arrived at my mother's house around 10:00 a.m. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee, made with my new espresso machine, and I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Hello," I said, my voice deliberately calm. "Alice, what is the meaning of this?" It wasn't my mother, it was Evelyn. Her voice, usually so syrupy and curated, was sharp and brittle, like shattered glass. I could hear my brother Caleb muttering angrily in the background. "I'm not sure what you mean, Evelyn," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "The check, Alice, the $10 check, is this a joke? Are you trying to humiliate us?" "It's not a joke," I replied simply. "I thought the note was clear. It's my blessing. It's what I can afford to contribute." "What you can afford?" she shrieked, and I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "We know what you make, we know you have savings. Caleb told me, you think this is funny, you're just jealous. You're jealous that your brother is happy, that he's getting married, and that you're—" She trailed off, but I knew what she'd been about to say, that I'm alone. "Is Caleb there, Evelyn?" I asked, my voice still dangerously quiet. "He's right here, and he's furious." "Put him on." There was a fumbled sound, and then my brother's voice, high-pitched and defensive. "Alice, this isn't cool. $10. What are you trying to prove? You're ruining everything." "What exactly am I ruining, Caleb?" "The wedding. Evelyn's been working so hard on this, and you pull this stunt. After you already bilaid on Christmas, what is wrong with you?" "What's wrong with me?" I said, and now my own voice was rising, the calm facade cracking. "What's wrong with me? I drove 8 hours, Caleb, through a blizzard. I showed up at Mom's house on Christmas Eve to surprise you with a car full of gifts. The house was dark. It was empty. You were all at a cabin you forgot to tell me about. I found out from a cousin's social media post. I drove 8 hours back alone on Christmas morning." And then, 2 days later, with not so much as a real apology, Mom calls to demand I give you $1,000. "So no, Caleb, I'm not ruining anything. I'm just done." There was a stunned silence on the other end. He hadn't known. Of course he hadn't. My mother had likely sugar-coated the entire thing. You came to the house," Caleb stammered. "Yes, she came." I heard my mother's voice now, faint, as if she'd just entered the room. "Alice, honey, I told you that was just a mix-up." "Hand the phone to Mom, Caleb," I ordered. A moment later, Diane was on the line. "Alice, you are blowing this way out of proportion. You're trying to punish your brother for a simple mistake." "Was it a mistake to ask me for $1,000, Mom?" "It wasn't a demand, it was a request," she yelled. "It's what family does, you support each other. You've always been so generous, Alice. This $10 check, it's just cruel, it's petty and it's cruel." "No, Mom," I said, and the calm was back, cold and absolute. "What's cruel is treating your daughter like an ATM. What's cruel is forgetting her at Christmas. The check is a symbol. It's all the blessing I have left to give. The Bank of Alice is closed." I could hear Evelyn in the background again, her voice a poisonous whisper. "She's trying to sabotage us, Caleb. She's jealous. She's always been jealous of you." "I'm not jealous, Evelyn," I said loudly so she could hear. "I'm just done paying for you. I'm done paying for all of you." Evelyn let out a sound that was half scoff, half laugh. "Done paying for us? What are you even talking about? You send Mom a lit. La money for her car? Big deal. Don't act like you're some kind of martyr, Alice. You're just a bitter, lonely woman, and you can't stand that your brother is building a beautiful life." Her words, so perfectly designed to wound, landed with a dull thud. A month ago, they would have crippled me. They would have sent me into a spiral of self-doubt and tears. But now they were just noise. Because Evelyn, in her arrogance, had no idea what was coming. She thought my martyrdom was just a little money for a car. She thought my power was symbolic. She was still laughing, still secure in the belief that this was just a tantrum, that I would eventually cave and write the real check. "You know what, Evelyn? You're right," I said, a smile in my voice. "Maybe I am bitter, but at least I'm not a fraud. Good luck with the wedding deposits, I mean that." I hung up. I blocked Evelyn's number. I blocked Caleb's. I left my mother's line open. She would be the next one to call. But her call, I knew, wouldn't be about the $10 check. Her call would be one of pure, unadulterated panic. I had about 48 hours to wait. The next 2 days were the quiet before the storm. December 30th and 31st passed in a blissful, profound silence. No calls, no texts. I deep cleaned my apartment. I went for a long walk in the snow. I read a book. I slept, for the first time in a decade, with a truly clear conscience. I was, for all intents and purposes, a woman who no longer had a family. The grief of it was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it was eclipsed by the intoxicating lightness of freedom. The morning of January 1st, New Year's Day, I woke up, made myself a perfect latte with the espresso machine, and sat by the window. My phone was on the table, face up. It was 9:02 a.m. when it started. My mother, Diane. I watched it ring. Once, twice, it stopped. A voicemail notification popped up. A second later, she called again. I let it ring, and again, and again. For 20 solid minutes, my phone lit up with her name, over and over. Then, the text started. "Alice, pick up the phone. It's an emergency. My car payment. The bank called. They said it didn't go through. Did you change your bank account? Alice, call me. My card was just declined at the grocery store. My credit card. Alice, the one you pay. Alice, my phone is about to be shut off. I got a text. What did you do?" The non-stop calls from the title. Here they were. This wasn't the emotional, guilt-tripping rage from 2 days ago. This was the raw, primal scream of someone whose entire support system had just been vaporized. Just as her calls paused, a new number I didn't recognize started ringing. I picked it up. "Hello." "Alice, what did you do?" It was Caleb, his voice cracking with hysteria. He must have been using a friend's phone since I'd blocked his. "My insurance. I got an email. I'm not insured. I can't drive. And my phone, it's cut off. Evelyn and I are on the side of the road. Our tasting appointment was canceled because her card was declined. You did this. You did this." "I did nothing, Caleb," I said calmly. "I just stopped doing." What does that even mean?" "It means I'm no longer paying your insurance. I'm no longer paying your phone bill. I'm no longer paying for Mom's car. I'm no longer paying for any of it. I told you. The bank is closed." "You can't do that," he shrieked. "Mom needs her car for her appointments. I need my phone for my music. Evelyn's events coordinator business runs on her phone. You're destroying our lives." My, I said, unable to help myself. "It sounds like my little bit of money was actually holding up quite a lot, didn't it? Funny how that works." I heard Evelyn grab the phone. You witch," she sputtered, all pretense of class gone. "You think you're so clever? You're a jealous, bitter, childless woman, and this is all you have. Trying to ruin our happiness." "The only person ruining your happiness, Evelyn," I said, my voice like ice, "is you. You hitched your wagon to a 30-year-old barista who lives off his sister. You thought you were marrying into a family with a safety net. You were wrong. I was the safety net. And I'm gone. You and Caleb are on your own. Good luck building that beautiful life together." You can't," she stammered, but I could hear the real, genuine fear in her voice now. The swagger was gone. This wasn't just an insult. This was a financial crisis. This was the end of the Willows. This was the end of her dream wedding. "I can," I said, "and I have." I hung up. I blocked the new number. The phone immediately rang again. My mother. I sighed, took a deep breath, and finally answered. I put it on speakerphone. "She's finally answering," I heard Diane sob. She was clearly with Caleb and Evelyn. "Alice, honey, please," my mother begged, her voice thick with tears. It was the most broken I had ever heard her. Please just turn it all back on, just for now. We can talk about this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry about Christmas. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to me. I'll be ruined. They'll take my car, Alice. I'll have no way to get anywhere. The old Alice, the fixer, the daughter, trembled inside me. A wave of guilt washed over me. This was my mother. Then I heard Evelyn's sharp whisper in the background, "Tell her you'll pay her back, just lie." And just like that, the guilt evaporated. "Mom," I said, my voice hardening, "I co-signed for that car. You haven't paid a single dollar in 3 years. I've paid over $13,000 for it. I paid for the new roof on your house. I've paid your phone bill for a decade. I've paid for Caleb's entire adult life. And in return, you forgot me and demanded $1,000. This isn't a mistake, Mom. This is the consequence. You all need to learn to stand on your own feet." But how?" she wailed. "I'm retired, Caleb, he's an artist." "Then you'll have to unretire, Mom," I said, the words tasting like steel. "And Caleb will have to get a second job, or a third, or maybe Evelyn can finally coordinate an event that actually pays her." "You're a monster," Diane shrieked, the tears vanishing, replaced by her familiar, venomous rage. "After everything I did for you, you ungrateful, selfish girl, you'll regret this. You'll be all alone and you'll have no one." "No, Mom," I said, and a strange, sad peace settled over me. "I'm just free. The $10 check was my blessing. This call is my goodbye." I ended the call, and then I did the final, hardest thing. I opened her contact, and I pressed block. The silence that followed was total. For 2 weeks, my phone didn't ring. It was the strangest, most peaceful January I had ever experienced. The phantom limb of my family's dependency still twitched. I'd find myself checking my phone, bracing for an emergency, but none came. The silence was my confirmation. The only thing they had ever wanted from me was my money. With the bank vault sealed, they had no reason to call. The story, however, was far from over. I learned what happened next from my aunt, my mother's sister, who had been at the infamous cabin Christmas. She called me about 3 weeks later, her voice a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. "Alice, dear," she began, I think you should know what's happening. Your mother is, well, she's beside herself." According to my aunt, the fallout had been swift and brutal. My mother, Diane, had indeed lost the car. It was repossessed. Without a car and now without a supplementary credit card, she was effectively trapped. She had to unretire, just as I'd predicted. She was now working as a cashier at the very grocery store where her card had been declined. The humiliation, my aunt said, was profound. But the real drama, the true climax, centered on the wedding. Caleb and Evelyn had not, in fact, downgraded. Evelyn, it turned out, was a creature of pure, undiluted ego. She had refused to cancel the venue, refused to scale back her vision. She was convinced, absolutely convinced, that she could bully her own parents or harass Caleb into fixing the financial black hole I had created. She had failed. Her parents, wealthier than mine but not stupid, had apparently told her they wouldn't fund a fantasy. And Caleb? Well, Caleb was just Caleb. He had no money, no credit, and no skills beyond making a latte. The wedding day arrived. My aunt, against her better judgment, had gone. She called me from her car on her way home. "Alice, you will not believe what just happened," she said, and I could hear the restrained shock in her voice. It was a disaster, a complete and utter train wreck. The ceremony itself had been tense, she said. The vendor list was a skeleton crew. The grand, floral arrangements Evelyn had demanded were now just a few sad bouquets on the tables, paid for by her mother. The open bar I was supposed to have funded was now a cash bar, and the guests were grumbling. But the climax came at the reception. It was time for the speeches. Caleb, my brother, got up, looking pale and nervous. He gave a short, stammering speech about his beautiful bride. Then Evelyn took the microphone. She was supposed to start by thanking everyone for coming, my aunt whispered into the phone. Instead, she just snapped. Evelyn, it seemed, had been drinking. A lot. She stood there in her outrageously expensive dress in her half-paid-for venue, and her eyes scanned the crowd. "I just want to thank everyone," Evelyn began, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "who helped make this day so special." She then proceeded, in front of 150 guests, to call out her deadbeat new husband for not being a real man and making her beg for everything. She called out her own parents for being cheap. And then she turned her sights on me. "But a special thank you," Evelyn snarled into the microphone, "goes to my sister-in-law, Alice, who is not here, by the way, because she's a jealous, bitter, lonely old maid." My aunt said you could have heard a pin drop. The entire room was frozen. "Alice, who thinks she's so much better than us," Evelyn continued, her voice rising to a shriek. "She tried to ruin my wedding. She sent us $10. She cut off her whole family because she's a miserable." She nev got to finish the sentence. "Because my brother, Caleb, weak, golden child, spineless Caleb, finally, for the first time in his 30 years of life, did something." He lunged forward and grabbed the microphone from her hand. "Stop it, Evelyn," he yelled, his voice cracking. "Just stop. She didn't ruin this. You did, I did, we treated her like dirt, my sister. My sister drove 8 hours for Christmas and we left her. We left her and then we asked her for money." He was crying now, my aunt said. Big, gulping sobs right there in front of everyone. "She paid for everything," Caleb shouted, his voice echoing in the stunned hall. "My whole life, and all you cared about was her money. All I cared about was her money. She's not the monster, Evelyn, we are." Evelyn, in a fit of pure rage, slapped him hard across the face. The room erupted. Evelyn's mother burst into tears. Caleb's new father-in-law was on his feet, yelling. My aunt said she grabbed her purse and walked straight out. "The marriage was over before the cake was even cut, Alice," she said. "He left with his parents." She stayed there, screaming at the staff about the bill. I sat there on my sofa, phone in hand. It was the most dramatic, public, and utterly devastating implosion I could have ever imagined. My $10 check, my small act of defiance, had been the butterfly wing that caused a hurricane. I had set a trap, but in the end, they had all walked into it, held hands, and triggered it themselves. The downfall was as swift as it was complete. The marriage, as my aunt predicted, was over. I learned through the grapevine that Evelyn's parents, mortified by her public behavior and the revelation of her financial demands, paid the outstanding bill for the wedding venue on one condition: that she file for an annulment and move back home. The event's coordinator was, in effect, grounded. Her social media, once a glistening monument to a life she wasn't paying for, went dark. My mother, Diane, faced her own quiet reckoning. Working as a cashier at 62 after decades of early retirement was a daily humiliation. She had no car, no credit, and no one to call. Her golden child, Caleb, had, in a spectacular flameout, lost his wife and his dignity in one night. He moved back into her house, into his old childhood bedroom. The two of them were now trapped together, two dependents with no one left to depend on. About 6 months later, I received a letter. It was from Caleb. It wasn't a request for money, or I would have burned it. It was, impossibly, an apology. He wrote that after the wedding, he'd had a total breakdown. He started going to therapy. He admitted that his entire life had been a series of handouts, enabled by our mother and funded by me. He wrote that when Evelyn had turned on him, he'd finally seen himself through her eyes, a weak, talentless man-child. He said he was working 2 jobs now, the barista gig and a night-stocking job at the same grocery store as Mom, and was slowly paying off the debts from the wedding. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just said he was sorry. He said he finally understood what I had done and why. I read the letter, and for the first time since that Christmas Eve, I cried. I cried for the brother I'd lost, and for the man he was finally, painfully, trying to become. I didn't write back, not yet. As for me, the Bank of Alice may have closed for my family, but it was wide open for its primary stakeholder. The $9,660 I saved that first year, and the thousands after, became my freedom fund. The Italy vacation I'd planned in my head became a reality. I sent my clinic a notice, taking a 2-month sabbatical. I spent 3 weeks in Italy, just as I dreamed, drinking wine on balconies overlooking Florence. I spent 2 weeks in Greece, learning to sail. I spent the rest of my time on a quiet beach in Spain, reading all the books I'd never had time for. I came back to my life refreshed, lighter, and wholly my own. I excelled at work. I made new friends. I started dating again, this time with a spine of steel and boundaries that were non-negotiable. One evening, nearly a year after the $10 check, I was walking home when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. Hey, Alice. It was my mother. Her voice was thin, hesitant. I hadn't heard it in 365 days. Hi, Mom. I know you blocked me, she said, rushing the words out. I'm calling from a payphone at the store. I saw your pictures. Your aunt showed me from Italy. You looked so happy. I am happy, Mom. There was a long, aching silence. I could hear the faint beep of a checkout scanner in the background. I just wanted to say, she started, and her voice broke. You were right. I know you were right. I miss my daughter, Alice. I really, really miss my daughter. It wasn't a request for money. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a guilt trip. It was, after all. This time, the simple, devastating truth. I took a deep breath, the cold night air filling my lungs. The wound was still there, a faint scar, but it no longer ached. It was just a part of me now. I miss you too, Mom, I said. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't a reunion. But it was, after a year of silence, a beginning. I had set my trap to catch a manipulator and a leech, but in the end, I had freed a brother and maybe, just maybe, found my mother again. I had chosen myself, and in doing so, I had given them the one gift I never had before, the chance to finally grow up.